Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are organizing in my kitchen because, let's face it, it really needs it. It's a hot mess. So here's a lovely look at my spice cabinet before I organized it. And yes, it is a hot mess. The state that it's in right now is basically if I touch anything, all of the jars fall out. Everything is in a different container. There are definitely plenty of expired items in there. There's most definitely some spilled corn syrup on the top. Everything needs to be wiped out, gone through, and totally reorganized. And I was scrolling through YouTube one day and I saw a YouTube shorts where this woman was organizing her spice cabinet. And I thought, you know what? This is something that I need to do for the new year because I am definitely wanting to declutter and just get my life in order this year. So what I did is I marched over onto Amazon where I buy everything in my life and I purchased some supplies. So the first item that I purchased were these glass jars. These are so pretty when they're all lined up in the spice cabinet, and I really like them because they are glass, and so they are in fact dishwasher safe. However, probably once you put the labels on them, you're not going to want to put them in the dishwasher. They were honestly a pain to unpackage all of them. As you can see, they are each packaged in kind of their own little box within a larger box. They come 12 to a package, and so I first ended up ordering 3 boxes of them, so I would have 36 total. It took me a little while to kind of sit here and unbox them all. Looking back on it, I probably should have made my kids do this, but it is nice when they're packaged up really good like that because then obviously they don't break en route. So once I got them all unpackaged, I decided to wash them before I put the spices in them. Now, like I said, these are dishwasher safe. However, I was too impatient and I just wanted to get going with this project. So I didn't want to wait for them to go through the whole dishwasher cycle. So I just decided to wash them with soap and hot water in my sink. And I was very careful to make sure that I didn't break any of them. I just washed them with soap and hot water. I guess luck was on my side that day because I indeed did not break any of them. Was it a little bit tedious to wash all of these? Yes, but like I said, I was eager to get this project done. I was just at the point where I was really tired of my spice cabinet being such a mess and I needed to get this crossed off my list. I cook a lot, and so I am constantly reaching into my spice cabinet for vinegar and oil and different spices and everything like that. And so it's just something that has been continuously bothering me for a while, and I wanted to take care of it now. Okay, so once the jars were all washed and rinsed, I turned them upside down on a towel, and then I did go ahead and dry them off with a tea towel. You do want to make sure that they are dried off quite well before you add your spices into them because you don't want the jars to be wet and then be adding dry spices to them. It's going to make your spices clump up and you want to try and keep them as dry as possible. So besides the jars, the other things that I picked up for this project were the spice labels for said glass jars. I got these on Amazon. Obviously, I'll link all of this stuff down below. I really like that these are very kind of like minimalist, and I like that the black label matches with the black bamboo top. I think it just looks really nice. And then I also picked up a small spice funnel, which I think will come in super handy, especially when I'm refilling like from larger spice containers into smaller ones. And then from Walmart, I also picked up a couple of these expanding shelves that basically these extend to almost the whole width of my spice cabinet. I actually picked up 2 so I could do 2 shelves of those. I think that will be enough, but if I need to get more, you know, I can always run to Walmart and grab another one. So the other thing I really love about this particular labels set is that it is just so extensive in terms of all of the spices names that they offer. So definitely recommend this label set if you're looking for something like this. I think the part that I struggled with the most was just trying to get the labels on straight, but I think I did an okay job. And honestly, the labels are so large that you can pretty much just line them up with the bottom of the jar and it's pretty easy. So this is the part that okay, let's rewind a little bit. So I know I complained about the unwrapping of the spice jars, but this was the part, honestly, I think that took the longest time. And honestly, it even stretched into the next day and the day after, because there was just so much stuff to go through. I feel like I am a terrible estimator at the amount of time that things take. I don't know if any of you guys feel that way. You can let me know in the comments below. Like in my head, I think, oh, this project is probably going to take 2 or 3 hours. And in reality, it takes like 2 to 3 days. So I guess that's just, how it goes. But either way, I definitely wanted to kind of thoroughly go through everything and just make sure that I threw away any spices that were expired. And then the other thing too is that I really just had a lot of different sized containers, and I knew that I had duplicates of some things. Like I knew I had probably like 3 containers of chili powder in there, different sizes of garlic powder, and just especially the things that I use more frequently. I definitely wanted to take those and kind of condense them down all into one container. Some of the spices I was able to just kind of pour straight from the jar that they were in into the new jars, depending on what it was. But I do have to say that metal spice funnel definitely came in handy, especially for some of the more powdery spices, or if like the spices were in a bag, I found that it was easier to transfer them using that funnel. And this one was pretty inexpensive, and I feel like it's pretty good quality. It's stainless steel, so it's gonna pretty much last me for the rest of my life, but definitely recommend investing in that if you're going to be working on a project like this. One tip also that I have is if your spices are clumped together, go ahead and take a chopstick, or you could use a metal skewer and stick it down into the spice jar and just use that to stir up the spices so everything loosens up before you transfer it into the other jar. This obviously works anyway, even if you're just wanting to get something unclumped. A wooden skewer or a metal skewer or a chopstick works really well. Now, this was probably the part that was honestly like the most fun for me is, taking all of these spices and organizing them into nice little containers. It's like the part of me when I was 10 years old, organizing all of my markers and my stickers in my room. That was like how I like nerded out as a kid. And now I'm just like organizing spices in my kitchen. The other thing I was going to mention too is that I have seen some folks do spice drawers instead of cabinets. I thought about doing that because I do have a large drawer kind of near my stove that would work for that. And so basically what they do is when you pull the drawer out, all of the spices are kind of just laying flat on these little stair steps. I think that looks nice, but I honestly think that I probably wouldn't have enough room. And some people may say that I have too many spices. I honestly, like I said, I cook a lot. I cook all the time. I just consider it something that I need to have on hand to be able to cook all the things that I want to cook. And honestly, I didn't end up throwing that many spices away that were expired. Obviously, there are some things that you just purchase for, and use them for one recipe, and then you end up tossing it out after it expires. But for the most part, I do use everything up. I also want to recognize, I know that not everyone has a large kitchen like this. And so depending on kind of the space that you have to store your spices in, houses that we've lived in before this, or even apartments that we've lived in before this, obviously I haven't always had this much room to be able to store this many spices. So I do want to recognize that if you have a smaller space, this may not work for you. When I had smaller spaces in my kitchen and was organizing my spices, I found it better to purchase the smaller containers. I think the brand is like Tones maybe, or something like that. They're like those little red containers, and those I could easily kind of just stack up in a bin and put them in the cabinet, and they took up a lot less space. So definitely consider that, obviously, when you're deciding how to organize yours in the size of space that you have. Sometimes I also get asked questions on what are the spices that you should keep on hand. And I actually have a list of spices in my cookbook, the Essential Pantry Cookbook, that lists basically all of the things that I use the most frequently. Now, obviously that isn't an extensive list, but it's definitely a good place to get started, especially if you're just, kind of building your pantry and building your spice cabinet. I'll also type out that list down below in case you want to screenshot it. But if you do have my cookbook, the list is definitely in there. Okay, so I've got the first 2 shelves cleared, so I need to wipe those out. My issue now is that I don't have quite enough jars. I kind of maybe thought that would happen, but I ordered 3 boxes, so 36 total, and I figured that would be enough. The smart thing would have been to count ahead of time, but obviously I couldn't be bothered. Anyway, so I need to order 2 more boxes of the jars. What I'm gonna actually do now is probably take this shelf out because I'm thinking the rack I have won't be tall enough, so I'm gonna wipe these shelves down, take them out, and then probably just start putting these in alphabetical order so I can get a good idea of how much space I'll need. Okay, so I'm just gonna start out by wiping out the cabinet. It actually wasn't as dirty as I thought it was gonna be, but it definitely needed to be cleaned. It hadn't been wiped out in a while, so I'm just using like a multi-surface spray along with a damp hot rag. And then I did end up removing one of the shelves so that I actually have one less shelf than I did before. However, when you see how I kind of stack all the spice jars up, you'll kind of see why I did that, so I could reach in the back and have more clearance vertically. And if you're wondering what to do with the extra shelf, like the extra wooden shelf that was in your cabinet, just put it on top of your cabinet, like up above the crown molding, because it's just going to sit up there and no one's going to see it. And yeah, it's going to collect dust, but if you ever want to put it back in your cupboard, all you have to do is take it down, wash it off, and put it back in. Is this perfect? No, because I've noticed when I'm going to grab spices that I do have kind of a hard time reading the back row, and sometimes I have to kind of move things. But is it better than it was? Of course. Like, is there ever going to be a perfect solution? Probably not. But as I keep on using this and kind of learn where things are at, then it's going to get easier and easier. So now it was time to tackle this top shelf, which this was the one I thought that was the most overwhelming because, as you know, the top shelf is usually the one that you access the least frequently. And so, yes, it is where I found the most expired ingredients. And I even found a few things up there that I didn't even remember I had. So I took everything down and went ahead and wiped that out as well. Okay, so this is what it looked like after I emptied the top shelf and got some of the jars in. Nice start. So I want to show you the progress so far that I've made today. And then when I get the rest of my empty jars in a couple of days, I'll give you an update, obviously. Now, I still have quite a few spices to put in jars. In fact, all of these spices in this bin are gonna go in these glass jars. So I'm probably gonna have to scoot some of these together so I can fit everything in, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So I still have seafood seasoning, everything bagel seasoning, fennel seed, lemon pepper, saffron, bay leaves. I think my baking extracts, I'm gonna put these somewhere else in a different cabinet or maybe in the pantry. I don't use these as often. I obviously use vanilla extract probably more than anything else, but I'll be back in a few days when I get my other jars. All right, so it's time to show you guys the finished product of my spice cabinet. So I'll give you a more in detail look, but I just wanna kind of share with you in general how everything turned out. So overall, I'm very happy with it. Do I still probably have way too many spices? Yes, but I love that they are all in jars, uniform, and the best part is that they are labeled and alphabetized. Now, what will probably end up happening and what I've learned over the past couple days as I've been using this and cooking is that some of the things that I use more frequently probably do need to be placed near the front. So the alphabetizing may be impacted by things that I'm gonna use more frequently. But overall, I think this looks really nice. Now, one of the cons I would say to storing your spices in jars like this is that you don't have the sprinkle spout. So what I mean by that is if you're a person who likes to just like sprinkle things in to your food as you're cooking it, that's something you can still do with these jars, but it's not quite as controlled. Now, I just throw all caution to the wind and sprinkle out of these jars. But if you want to make sure that you don't dump the whole spice jar into your pot of like simmering soup, you might want to use, you know, a teaspoon or a tablespoon or something like that. But honestly, the fact that they are all uniform makes it easier for me to kind of get in and out of, because I don't have to stop and think, okay, is that chili powder in this one? Do I need a teaspoon to get that out? Do I need a tablespoon? You know, some of the jars are like more narrow, short, tall, whatever. I really like that these have a more open or a bigger opening so that you can get your spoons in and out of them. You probably also can't tell, but there are two different types of jars. One is a little bit shorter and one is a little bit taller. And the reason for that is because the ones that I originally purchased, when I went back to buy them again because I didn't have enough, they were of course out of stock. And so I had to get a replacement, which the replacement have these little letters on the bottom, but honestly they look so similar that you really wouldn't even be able to tell, and the volume of them is still the same, so it's not really that much of a difference. Now, if I wanted these shelves to stretch all the way across the cabinet, I would have had to purchase two of them. I thought this was actually fine because then I could store kind of larger, more frequently used items over here. So over here on this side, I've got my little container of vegetable oil that I use every once in a while, baking powder and baking soda. I can also link these labels down below. These are pantry labels. I'm going to be doing a pantry reorganization also. I got those on Amazon. I store my baking powder and baking soda in mason jars. And then I've got my cornstarch back there, my little spice funnel, some bouillon. And then this is something, this Pam spray that I would say I use frequently. So I wanted it to be accessible along with some of the vinegars that I use. And then back here, I've just got some sea salt that I would say I don't really use it all that often. So I put it in a little airtight container, labeled it, and then I've got my extra garlic powder back there as well. And then this is sort of the last half of the alphabet, except that you can see that I have some C spices right here. So like I said, I feel like the alphabetizing will be something that probably does maybe go away a little bit over time, but at least they're all uniformly labeled. And the other thing I really like about these is that you can like easily see how much you have left in them. On the top here, this is kind of a little bit of a mess, but that's fine. It's just all of the other stuff that didn't really fit in all of those jars. And I did get rid of quite a few expired things and things that I just wasn't going to use. I really do like these containers. This one slides out really easily, and then I can keep kind of all of my little packets of things in there. This shelf, I would say, this spice shelf right here is not super functional. It's definitely something that I'll probably have to get up on a step stool if I want to reach all the way back there, but it's things that I don't use all that frequently. And then over here, I just have regular salt, red wine vinegar, my kosher salt, balsamic vinegar, some different other seasonings and things like that. So overall, I'm very happy with how this turned out. As you can see, it was a mess before, and it is much, much better now. Still not perfect, but I've definitely resigned myself to the fact that nothing in my house is probably ever going to be Pinterest perfect. So like this video if that's you as well. All right, thanks you guys for following along. Don't forget, if you want to pick up any of these items, I will have them all linked in the description box below, and make sure that you are subscribed, because Milo says make sure you are subscribed. I know, because I have lots of other organizing and decluttering videos coming up soon. Say bye-bye. Bye.